Amazing. Okay, so before we get started, I'm just going to introduce myself and a little bit about the work we do. So I am the policy researcher here at Fashion Roundtable for representation and inclusion. So essentially, we've done an inquiry into all the different issues that people have faced within the fashion industry around representation and inclusion. So we've literally covered racism, Islamophobia, transphobia, ageism, ableism, any kind of issue that, or any kind of discrimination you can think of, we've covered it, and it's been really, really interesting. We've conducted some evidence sessions where we've heard real people's stories and the challenges that they've been through, and it's been very eye-opening, quite disappointing at times, but very necessary. So with the research paper, we're hoping to make a set of policy recommendations that we really, really hope will go on and make real sustainable change. So today we're here in conversation with the lovely Eden. So before we get started, please introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get to where you are right now?
So hello everyone, I'm Eden Loweth and I am the designer for my brand called Art School, and Art School is really created off the basis of focusing on community inclusion. So we work a lot with marginalised communities, people with different ability issues, trans people, and I'm very lucky to also be an ambassador for Fashion Roundtable and an advisor on their Appiagyei report. So a lot of the work that we do is kind of broader than just making clothes. It has a kind of social or political aspect to it as well.
That's amazing. That was even going to be my next question, was to ask you, how would you break down Art School? But that's a really, really amazing description, and it fits really nicely as well with what we do here at Fashion Roundtable and making a political statement as well as a fashion statement. I think it's really important, especially in today's day and age. So yeah, you're a very big advocate for representation and inclusion, but what would you say representation looks like to you?
I think particularly in any creative industry, especially, representation it's really important that people can tell that it's coming from a place of truth, but also from inside those relevant communities. And I think that's what we're so lucky at with in London today, like with Bethany Williams, who works kind of with sustainability, people like Bianca Saunders and Wells Bonner, who look at their own kind of backgrounds. And I think on race, and brands like myself and Charles that focus on gender, I think it's really important that those stories feel like they're coming from a personal perspective, and that's what makes it feel relatable, and where people can understand it, and it doesn't come across as kind of performative inclusion. I think that's a big issue, particularly within the way that advertising and media see different gender issues, different issues on race. And without that element of a personal relation to what you're actually talking about, whether it's even not necessarily through you, but even through the people you work with. So, for example, for the next show, although I found myself in a position as being kind of a spokesperson for my community, I don't know everything, I don't know everyone. And so we're partnering with the team from London Trans Pride to also include a broader range of different communities within our casting, because I think although brands like myself and Charles are seen as kind of a most diverse show in London, it's really important that we're continuing to expand and be an open door to new voices. So I think the only way you can do that is by bringing other people who have their own lived experience into the work that you do, and also offering them paid work in exchange.
That's so true. And I think what you said about performative activism is so true, because you see a lot of tokenistic work, and you kind of see it's almost like a seal of diversity, and you look at the teams and there's no kind of diversity on the actual internal team. So I think the work that you're doing is really important, and making sure you bring that diversity into every single aspect of your brand, which is amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the next question I have is the conversation and the discourse around representation and inclusion. It's usually focused on the minorities themselves, and it's almost like the onus is put onto us as minorities to make the most noise and to have the conversations and to start them. which I feel like is extremely problematic. And what I would ask you is, how would you go about showing people that this conversation it's relevant to everyone, and making our spaces and our communities inclusive should be everyone's responsibility, and not just the responsibility of minorities?
I think what we've tried to do is, first of all, I'm a big believer, which I guess is why I work quite well with the Fashion Roundtable, is that you can't scream at a closed door and expect change to happen. I think change can only actually happen effectively from the inside of a system out, which is why, for example, I've always felt it really important that we show on schedule and show within the British Fashion Council systems and work inside these already existing, sometimes outdated systems in the industry, because that's the way that your work, but also your business and what you're trying to say within it kind of has weight and has enough weight to make impact to a broader audience. But then interesting, I think, in terms of relating to a wider public, what we've tried to do, especially over the last couple of seasons, is mirror the lived experiences of our kind of queer kids and queer community within other community groups that are more within the mainstream of society. So, for example, this began because we got stocked in matches a couple of years ago, and very quickly I started getting these emails from these older cis white women who buy the clothes on matches, have no idea about the brand, just see it on New In and buy it as good clothes. And they started formulating this small community of women that all would email me every season asking for new things, asking when it was going to land in store, because they always bought the same cut of the garment, the same item, but they wanted the new colour. And I then decided to kind of Google stalk these women one day to find out who they were. And then I invited them all into a casting. We actually had them walking the show 2 seasons ago, and then more last season. And that mirroring of seeing these women that come from all different backgrounds, quite wealthy, probably, you know, had quite a normal life in comparison to mine or a lot of the kids that were there alongside them in that show. And this started a real conversation, because even then, when they'd walked in the show and the press image came out, I became friends with a lot of them on Facebook, for example. And you'd see all these ordinary people that live in their towns commenting on it and then looking up the brand, and then I could see them following us on Instagram. Wow. So, and then we had the same thing happen last season when we partnered with Zebedee, who I met through Fashion Roundtable, who are an agency for people with different ability issues. And we had quite a whole swathe of their models in the show, and we will do again this season. And again, the comparison of someone who has a disability or is missing a limb or has had something traumatic happen in their life, which, you know, anyone can without having an issue with their gender or having faced racial discrimination. You know, seeing the way that those lives and their kind of lived experience matched up to a trans girl who's trying to transition on the NHS, or one of those models that you know, a 19-year-old that's just moved to London and is questioning their identity or struggling with their with racial discrimination at their university. Those kids talking with these other people that we brought in from all different aspects starts a conversation. So I think what we're trying to do is, as we grow as a brand, create those conversations that can then kind of burgeon into wider discussion through other things we do around the shows. And it's also why I think the shows for a brand like me are very important, because they, twice a year, whatever I do for them gives that big point of discussion for a wider community, for our wider community on social media and beyond that, to start discussing it themselves. And I think that's how it's a similar thing to the way that Bethany's approached it with sustainability. I think it's slow and steady. You kind of can break small victories, I think, which then create little conversations that then start bigger ones.
It's so true. I always say that conversation is the best place to start. Nothing can happen without it.
If people can see that this person that's been ostracized from them in the media is actually a relatable human being that faces the same crap that we do, it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we're so used to categorizing ourselves as well as a society. We're so used to separating ourselves from one another that sometimes we don't realize that each and every single one of us is unique, and we own that, and we stand in our identity. So if we can do that, everyone else deserves that right as well. So you speak a lot about kind of emulating the experience of queer kids, for example. So what advice would you give your younger self if you could meet them, or anyone who, you know, is looking to be in a field like yours, but feels like there are roadblocks or obstacles in their way? What advice would you give them?
I think I was thinking about this quite a lot recently anyway. And I think, you know, I said to my studio manager the other day, because something had happened that was really good in the studio, that this kind of existence and this life shouldn't happen to people from a background like me. You know, I come from a single parent household with no money. You know, quite often in the industry, a lot of the kids that do make it come from really wealthy backgrounds, normally white. If they are gay, they're privileged from, you know, their parents supporting them this entire time. And I've not had those things to be able to fall back on, all those safety nets. I think I've been equally, as much as it's been a massive amount of work beyond anything I think I could ever imagine me doing 5 years ago, mentally or physically. I think it's also about seeking out mentors and understanding the value that those people have at times of need. And, you know, if you can find the right people, and they can be from any walk of life. You know, at first, Charles Jeffrey was one of those people for me because I'm a couple of years younger than him. And when I was studying, that was really, for me, the person that I emanated. And then I was very lucky to work for Grace Wells Bonner for 2.5 years, and seeing the way she works, she's a genius. And holding on to those people rather than just kind of being around, but actually fully immersing yourself in their world for a bit, ultimately gave me the confidence to trust that I could do it. And now I've been very lucky. You know, this year I've had quite a lot of transition in art school, and I'm now working alone. And as part of that, I've really realised the value that, you know, like Tamara from Roundtable, and also Karen Binns, Cosette McCreary, these people have literally saved me on multiple occasions from making stupid decisions, or just really appreciating that I'm actually not doing as bad as I think I am at times. I think people like Bethany and Charles would say the same. If you form your own little network of people that can be kind of some people to push you forward, but also people that can act as kind of bookends in your life, to know that you've got this kind of continued background support as you grow in whatever field. I think that's really one of the best ways to be able to, and also understanding that things won't happen overnight. You know, in all appearances, when, you know, me or Bethany or any of us got famous in fashion terms, it appears like this has happened overnight, but it's actually been 5 years since 5 years since I graduated and got fashion. So it takes a long time to get to a point of relative stability, and even now it's still scary, you know. So I think and I think also not a lot of people revolve around the idea that university is going to deliver those things for you. And as much as my university experience was really good, it's also down to going out there and finding those things for yourself. And I think, you know, particularly in the UK, we've got such an incredible network of creatives, whether it's in design, in styling, in music, that quite often those doors will be open to young people, and all they need to do is ask. And I think having a balance of education and real life experience is also really how you can grow. And I think looking back, that would be making that realization earlier probably would have done me some favors earlier on.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm not a fashion student, but if I was, I'd be like taking notes. Really good advice. So we spoke earlier about starting conversations and how little conversations create bigger conversations. But just to finish off, what would you say are 3 practical tips that people listening today can take to go about starting to make their communities and their environments more inclusive?
I think the power of social media is really important. And I think being not obviously performative in that, but really understanding how you want to share posts. I think there's some really great resources, but even figureheads like Monroe Bergdorf, for example, are really great to go to look to do things the right way. look at the information you're sharing and see how that relates to real people's lives. And if you want to show people how to do things the right way, really take it from people who know what they're doing and share the right information. I think one of the biggest things is when people share anything that they see as kind of clickbait. Like there's a lot of things because of the troubles in America and Black Lives Matter, where people were sharing really triggering series of slides about lynchings and, you know, awful instances that are happening there every day, and especially from my community, murder of so many trans women. But those things are actually incredibly traumatizing for people from inside those communities. So learning on how to share the right information that spotlights these problems, but in a way that people from inside those communities also will feel like you're supporting them. And I think also actually educating yourself on the organizations out there at the moment that actually are already saying things. You know, from my community, there's an amazing initiative called Transmissions, who work with Trans Pride, run by Lucia Blake and Emily Crooked, and they do a weekly event at Vogue Fabrics, which is open to all trans people to be able to go along to, and it's a real community. So looking for those things and really searching them out. And then I'd also say really raising each other up as well. I think so often people from all these different communities spend so long being kind of kept in the shadows, they don't always realize how amazing it is when people do kind of get a step ahead or get an opportunity fall into their lap. So I think also, and understanding also how amazing it is for those people when you do raise them up, you know. And I think even seeing they announced the new Waves Awards for the Fashion Awards, British Fashion Awards yesterday, and seeing the level of diversity on that list is really fantastic. I mean, you know, London's always been a step ahead in that sense, but I think seeing the level of diversity that, and also creative diversity that they're championing now is really important. So go out and find those things and follow those people and give them a bit of kind of love, I guess.
Yeah, and you've just given us a whole long list of people to follow, so there's no excuse for anyone watching today to not do anything. So I just want to say a huge thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom with us. I've learned so much myself just in this space of 10 minutes. So thank you so much. Everyone, please go follow and support Eden and Art School. And of course, follow Fashion Roundtable and look out for our paper, which will be coming out in March. So thank you, everyone.